Right now we are at the National Energy Summit this morning, and we're talking to top leaders about many issues and opportunities ahead when it comes to energy. Joining us right now is Mayo Shattuck. He is the president, chairman, and CEO of Constellation Energy. And Mayo, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Becky. Glad to be here.
When it comes to Constellation Energy, the one thing that stands out versus everybody else you're looking at is what a strong nuclear component you have. And nuclear energy is a huge focus on this conference. In fact, it is one of the recommendations put forth by this group, saying that we need to push this country to be much more reliant on nuclear. How did that come about?
Well, Constellation is one of the few fleet operators of nuclear plants. We have 5 plants out of the 104 in the country. There are not many fleet operators. The origin of the business was a utility would build a single plant, and one of the big issues associated with the existing fleet of plants in the United States is that they're actually not standardized, and as a consequence, they did get too costly, and we're very hopeful in the renaissance of new nuclear that we move down a path where we have more standardized plants to share costs between and actually lower the costs associated with them.
There has been a nuclear plant built in this country in decades, but is it your guess that in the next 10 years we will see many more nuclear plants?
Well, that's our objective, and we've built up a lot of the components to building a new nuclear plant. Obviously, there are many, many hurdles to overcome. Certainly capital is one of them, and we've developed a very strong relationship with the largest nuclear operator in the world, EDF,
right,
through a joint venture with the prospect of building the first plant actually in Maryland, next to 2 of our existing plants. But there are also other capital formation issues like loan guarantees from the federal government. There's a long process of getting licenses completed through the NRC. But we feel that nuclear power has to be part of the energy complex going forward. And as you suggested, the plants are in fact between 20 and 40 years old. There hasn't been one built in 20 years. Right. And in order to get a renaissance, we need all the supply chain issues to fall in place and develop a whole new manufacturing base that supports the build-out of new nuclear plants, as well as a new labor force that has to come along. So those kind of hurdles are all things that we're focused on at this point.
Another one of the big focuses has been on building out the smart grid. And I know at Baltimore Gas and Electric, you've had a plan that has been working through this, an initial plan. What are the results of that, and what can we expect to see?
Well, we've applied for a very ambitious smart grid program in the BGE area. And really what it entails is having smart meters. People generally associate that with being able to understand how to react to price signals. If energy is very, very high, say during the afternoon of a hot summer day, you don't run the dishwasher. You run it at night when prices for power are much lower. People react to real-time pricing. And I think the idea that a lot of this conference is about is to get us to the point where we actually have a system that allows people to react to prices, whether it is building generation because you have certain, or at least policy certainty about what the price of carbon is going to be, or in the household where people are reacting to how they use power. And a lot has happened in the last few years where people are better educated, they're lowering their use of energy at peak times, and this smart grid is really oriented towards having a methodology that puts the power of those decisions in the hands of our consumers.
You know, one of the best ways of kind of gauging the economy is watching it, power usage. What do you see right now in terms of both the consumer and in terms of industrial use? Where do we stand on our footing for the economy?
Well, you've probably heard that industrial use is down around the country between 3% and 7%, and that is
still
definitely
holding right now?
It is. There's been, you know, what we refer to as demand destruction. Closing down of manufacturing plants that might have moved offshore, simply just not economic because the energy costs associated with the production of their product are simply too high. But that number is the number that presumably comes back in an economic recovery. The interesting thing is...
But you're not seeing the beginning of signs of that just yet?
We're not really yet.
Okay.
On the residential side, there are more interesting forces at work because I think the education about power pricing and usage is actually really taking hold. There are incentives being put in place around the country for people to reduce their power consumption. They are becoming more efficient through better use of appliances and just their general use within the household.
Okay, and we've got to run, Mayo, but very quickly, if cap and trade passes, what's it going to mean to your consumers at BG&E?
Well, you know, we have a pretty healthy, balanced mix of power in the Maryland zone, particularly since we are heavily nuclear-oriented, which is emission-free. One of the great ambitions we have is to really use nuclear as the driving component of addressing climate change. If we could move the percent of power produced in the United States from 20% to 40% through nuclear, it would make a huge difference towards our ability to power electric cars, change the transportation industry, and really reduce carbon emissions.
Okay. Well, Mayo, we want to thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Becky, for having me.
Again, Mayo Shattuck with Constellation Energy. And Joe, we will send it back to you.